last Friday, Robert Kennedy Jr. was caught on tape. I don't know if that's the right. Again, I don't know because he didn't really back off of this either. But a leaked tape of RFK Jr. at a dinner or a fundraiser is showing him discussing how and pretty adamantly stating that COVID-19 is a biological weapon designed to target specific types of people, and certain groups are less prone or not targeted. Now, I am trying to not load too much, in the preface here, but we talked about this once before in another clip. It kind of got overlooked by a lot of people. You can go back, and I talked about this prior, but this audio tape has not been overlooked. This one has not been overlooked because, well, we'll discuss it in a sec. Here is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
And the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done.
He said ethnically targeted microbes, for those, who maybe couldn't have made that out. I know it's a little muffled. His voice is what it is. But this is also a little bit of a distance for those not watching, so it's not exactly the most clean audio, but just so you know.
Same thing. In fact, COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure, genetic differentials among different races of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. But we don't know whether it was deliberately targeted.
The people around him are just like, what the hell are you talking about?
That or not, but there are papers out there that show the racial and ethnic differential impact to that. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons, and we are developing ethnic bioweapons. That's what all those labs in the Ukraine are about. They're collecting Russian DNA, they're collecting Chinese DNA, so that we can target
people. What he's talking about is absolutely insane.
People by race.
So, all right. So I don't need the second part here, but this is beyond just being cringe, which that's a baseline. It is dangerous. How should I say this? It can't be overlooked that, frankly, two of the most targeted groups of individuals with regards to hate crimes in the last 2 to 3 years, and for Jewish Americans, it's been 7 or 8 years specifically, that Chinese people and Jews in America have been targeted at I mean, any sort of hate crime is, I guess, disproportionate, but it can't be overlooked that this type of rhetoric adds fuel to the fire for conspiracy theories, because this is a conspiracy theory. Like, we'll talk about the bioweapon part of it in a second. This is a conspiracy theory, just basically talking about how China, because this is you have to draw these conclusions. Somehow, China is targeting white and black people with a bioweapon that apparently only a few people know that they can do. RFK happens to be one of them, in theory, because he was researching it for a book. And that targeting is so specific that China, because I guess we have to take China's word for the reporting, right? That China barely even had any deaths from COVID, which we know we know for a fact is not true. We know that China lied about their numbers. But let's just say, okay, so you have to say that China developed the weapon in a lab. It was leaked. That he's acting like that's just like, oh yeah, that we know that. We don't know that. We don't know that. That's a theory. The most commonly accepted theory is at the wet market from a bat. We all have heard this. It is not confirmed, and neither is the lab theory. Okay? To say that we are developing bioweapons, that's not a shocker. We spend almost 900 billion with a B, 900 billion, that is on the books for the Department of Defense. Okay. We have no argument that that's probably something that exists, but to then say that it is unleashed upon the public, it is specifically unleashed from China onto the United States and the rest of the world to target white and black people. But Chinese people and Ashkenazi Jews are exempt somehow. Their biology is so different than, like, an Ashkenazi Jew is, for all intents and purposes, a white person, right? Unless you are a white supremacist and think that Jewish people are not white, then for the most part, Ashkenazi Jews are white people. So him saying that also underrides a certain level of what is the intent here? Why are you drawing this conclusion? Why not? Well, first of all, why are you talking about this? But why are you grouping these two together as a global, this conspiracy theory, this other, right? And I can't, I have to move forward because I'm going to talk about this for way too long, but there's two other clips that I need to talk about. And one of them, the next one also implicates COVID. So we will talk about it again. But the fact is that this is a dog whistle. This is not proven in any sort of case. The lab leak itself, the bioweapon, the fact that China lied about their numbers. So if they did this, they were killing their own people. The list goes on. It's like it's so hard to even fact check because it's just so much crap coming out all at once. But guess what? This next one combines. Here, let me read chat first. Lindsay says, this is why we need critical thinking, learning how to see credible sources, and the difference between correlation, causation, and systematic and structural racism is different. Millions of Americans died pre-vaccine because there was no vaccine. Certain groups of people are more likely to suffer from the spread of infectious disease because of infrastructural failures. And that is true. That is true. But here's the thing. He's not arguing that. He's not even saying that because of a socioeconomic lack of medical infrastructure. He's just saying because of the genetic makeup. That is what he's actually saying. Because of the genetic makeup of certain groups, they are less predisposed to getting COVID. And now, even if, let's just say, in the abstract, let's just say that was true. Somehow, it just targets the two largest populations in America. That's the, we don't want to say like, oh, well, maybe it affects people. Like the deaths are highly correlated with people with heart conditions or with obesity or with certain things that like are tied with normal heart conditions or I'm drawing a blank on it because whatever. But you know what I'm saying? The normal capacity in these things is implicated by having COVID. It is not to say that like, okay, the genetic makeup of this person predisposes them to having COVID, which we know that does happen for certain illnesses. Yeah, of course. Like, you know, people that have certain, traits are at more risk of certain things. You know, I don't have like examples off the top of my head, but we all know that that's true, right? But COVID to be designed for it, that's a whole nother level of craziness that's only going to be topped by this video. Here we have right-wing grifter and Daily Wire host Jordan Peterson talking and ranting as he does about how climate change is not real. And then we have RFK Jr., who is supposed to be a progressive, responding to this and talking about COVID in the same breath. So let's take a listen.
I've seen the climate apocalypse use fear to induce something approximating
the climate. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I made it like 3 seconds in this. Jordan Peterson is a nut job. The climate apocalypse, he's saying it like it's fake. He's saying like climate change doesn't even exist. He is not even saying that climate change exists. Now he's jumping out of his chair. You can see it. He's jumping out of his chair to say the climate apocalypse is used to create an authoritarian dictatorial state, shoving it down our throats. They love to say that. They love to say that. Right-wingers love to say the shoving it down our throats. The right wing, the authoritarian climate activists that have no power. The Green New Deal hasn't been gone into play. We don't really get subsidies for renewable energies, but somehow the renewable energy and the climate change activists are just so authoritarian. They want to control us.
the same kind of level of tyranny as far as I'm concerned.
Tyranny. Tyranny. You hear this? Climate change activists, in his mind, are so authoritarian that it is equivalent to tyranny. The climate change activists that have, what, like a handful of Congress people that actually support what they believe? Oh, my God.
That characterized the vaccine lockdown. So help me sort that out.
First of all, let me just say this about climate. I believe that carbon in the atmosphere and methane does increase warming. Look around. You can.
Yeah. So here's RFK Jr. Remember, this is. I need to remind you guys. RFK Jr. is running in the Democratic primary. He is not running as a Republican, which that might shock some people. He is running in the Democratic primary. So he has to say, yeah, well, you know, obviously climate change exists. I have to say that. But
You can see it everywhere. Ice caps are melting, etc. The Greenland ice sheet. I spent a lot of time outdoors, and I see over 69 years, I've seen the changes, and I've seen the mass migration of animals, of southern animals like black vultures, the northern increase in their ranges. I've kept track since I was a kid about when the leaves turns, and it's steadily moved up each year. And so I see that. All of my senses are telling me that the warming is occurring. My opinion is basically, as I said, it's based on common sense. I agree 100%.
it's common sense. Now here's, I'm going to pause it. And if, you know, for those who are watching live, you tell me, what do you think is common sense reaction policy and hopefully prevention policy with regards to climate change. You can throw it in the chat. You could say, hey, we're going to invest in electric vehicles. We want to change the energy grid. We want to subsidize renewable energies. We want to maybe move away from fossil fuels. We want to subsidize individuals to power their homes by having solar, having wind and geothermal invested in by municipalities. I mean, the list goes on and on. We could talk about it for days and days and days, but I'm not like, I don't think that any of you are going to say what he thinks is common sense. Remember, there is more. I say this with a lot of, not authority. Like, I'm not a climate scientist, but with authority in the sense that this is what the science says. Okay. There are more scientific studies that have been published and peer-reviewed that say that climate change is real and it is at least partially man-made. Then, the amount of studies that say that smoking causes lung cancer. There is that level of certainty from the science. Now, people want to say, oh, yeah, but science is not, you can't say that the science is concluded. Yeah, no, science is not concluded. You have to continue to always evolve and learn and adapt. But when the overwhelming majority, and I don't mean majority as in 51%, I'm talking about nearly 99%. It's like 98.7% of all peer-reviewed studies in the field of climate say that climate change is real and it is at least partially man-made. That is not something that we could just say we can ignore. Yep, just let things be. Yes, or common sense, guys. Common sense is
percent with you that this
he's agreeing. For common sense is not 100% agreeing with Jordan Peterson, by the way.
crisis is being used as a pretext for clamping down totalitarian controls the same way that.
I'm sorry. Let me just rewind that for you. I'm gonna emphasize what he just said. This is RFK Jr. stating, as the supposed left-wing progressive, that, and you will hear him say it out of his own mouth, that the climate crisis is being utilized as a pretext for authoritarian, totalitarian rule.
I agree 100% with you that this crisis is being used as a pretext for clamping down totalitarian controls the same way that the COVID crisis was. And it's the same people.
The same way that the COVID crisis was, which killed over 1 million Americans, by the way. And would have been way worse had we not had the vaccines, which he doesn't support, by the way. He only injects himself with steroids, not HGH. He is saying that it's the same people that want to control you with regards to COVID, which, by the way, it wasn't about control in COVID. It was about public health and public safety, which, yeah, they don't believe that. You can believe whatever you want, I suppose. But in reality, it is 100% regarding public health and safety. Now, here's the thing, if these people are so all-knowing and all-powerful that they were able to control the population with COVID, which they weren't, by the way. Remember that people pretty quickly were just out and about. We can argue about when we should, when we could, when we did, whatever. But for the most part, for like a year, people were choosing, with the support of the government, the Trump government, by the way, to stay home. There were lockdowns, yes. You weren't getting arrested in the United States, maybe in some odd place for doing something, but, you know, in Pennsylvania, you were not getting arrested. And we had a Democratic governor. Oh. He is claiming that it was authoritarian, totalitarian government during COVID, which I guess implicates Trump, but it's the same type of thing. It's the same people trying to utilize the climate crisis, which he's supposed to believe in, as a pretext for totalitarian tyranny. The logic doesn't even follow. They're not the same people, first of all, because he's going to talk about billionaires, which Jordan Peterson loves billionaires, so I don't know what the hell he's talking about to Jordan Peterson about it. His critique is not of billionaires, because guess what? Guess what his solution is? I don't even want to say it yet, because when you hear it, if you're drinking something, you might spit out your water.
It's intelligence agencies, it's the World Economic Forum, it's the
dog whistle.
Billionaires Voice Club at Davos, and it's the same kind of cabal of people who will use every crisis to stratify society toward, greater power for the super rich and greater power for the military, greater power for the intelligence apparatus, and less power for everybody else.
So he's about to say something important here, but he is saying that the climate crisis and responding to it, something that the overwhelming majority of Americans want to do, an insane amount of young people want to do, because guess what? We're the ones that are going to inherit the earth. He is saying that what we want to do, we must be brainwashed because we want to support billionaires. We want to support Bezos and Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and it doesn't even follow. It doesn't even follow. Trust me, I love bashing the billionaire class, right? We can do it all the time. His solution is not to tax the rich. His solution is not to have a wealth tax. His solution is not to subsidize solar. His solution is not to get rid of the subsidies for big oil. No, he doesn't want a war on carbon.
War on carbon is not going to solve the problem. If we don't have a habitat left at the end, my approach to energy is using...
I'm sorry, one more time before he gets to this. A war on carbon doesn't matter if we don't have a habitat at the end, but we might not have a habitat at the end if we don't make a move to renewables, because the environment is changing, and that's why we see increased wildfires in the Northeast. We see flash flooding all the time. We see tornadoes ripping through, and this is just in Bucks County. He is saying that if we have a war on carbon, it doesn't matter because we might not have a habitat. Well, we won't have a habitat unless we move towards renewable energy and a sustainable energy system that reduces our emissions and hopefully doesn't make climate change worse. But here's his solution.
And my approach to energy is using free markets and not top-down control. We can recover what we had, but we just have to stay out of fear, because that is the weapon of tyrants. If you like this video...
Yeah, no, you heard that right. RFK Jr. wants to use free markets. This is the progressive. This is the so-called progressive. He is talking about the most neoliberal approach to addressing the climate crisis that you could possibly imagine. Free markets. He doesn't even mention the billions of dollars that are used to subsidize fossil fuel companies in this country. Now, even if, let's just say today, we were like, you know what? No more subsidies for big oil. No more subsidies for solar, wind, or whatever. Free market time, guys. Well, guess what? Guess who that benefits? It's not the renewables. Because if you have a totally free market, then what happens is, as pointed out in the chat, you have extreme exploitation, expropriation of resources. You have fracking, you have drilling, you have all this stuff to extract the resources that are limited. And yeah, they might be cheaper now, but they are detrimental to the environment. Number one. Number two, they're not sustainable, both in the sense literally for the environment, but two, because they are limited as a resource. And three, having a free market starting from wherever Kennedy would be elected, he would become in January 2025. Free market in January 2025. Well, guess what? The ones that have hegemony over the energy markets, the energy space, are the ones that pre-exist now, which is the fossil fuel industry. So even if it's like saying we're going to have me, Connor OHanlon, run a race against Usain Bolt. Okay, well, I'm going to get blown out, right? Usain Bolt's at least was the fastest man on earth. But this is like saying we're going to run 100 meters and we're going to put Usain Bolt at the 50-meter line. What? This is free market. He just gets to start there. He might have started with an advantage, not just the natural born advantage that he has, just being a better runner. But he's had years and years and years of subsidization. He's had years and years and years of training. It's the same kind of thing. And we're just going to put him ahead. Because he's a much bigger and stronger athlete. He's faster than you. ExxonMobil is just a bigger and better company. It's just free market. That's capitalism. Capitalism, baby. Free markets from a so-called progressive, and he's talking about top-down control. Look, it's not even about control. Desubsidize, we don't even have to have like a carbon tax. We probably should, but let's just say we don't have that, right? Deprioritize fossil fuels, and prioritizing renewable energies alone would be a step in the right direction. Now, it's not fast enough, but it's something.